Sorry about that.
Good, good morning, everyone. My name is Gill. I'm a Salt Lake County District Attorney. And just a way of introduction, I'm joined here by Salt Lake City Fire Department Chief Carl Lieb, Lieb on the right, and Fire Marshal Tony Allred, Allred, behind me right over here. We also have Captain Berg from the Salt Lake City Fire Investigations as well here, and their team as well. I wanted to take this moment just first of all to just introduce that Salt Lake County District Attorney's Office just filed several charges. One charge against Matthew John Nelson for his alleged involvement in the June 19, 2026 fire in Memory Grove in Salt Lake City, Utah. It is alleged that Mr. Nelson used materials including wrappers and logs to build a campfire. Investigators determined that the fire spread into large shrubs and trees and caused damage in excess of $15,000. And as with all criminal filings, all persons accused of wrongdoing are presumed innocent unless and until convicted of a crime in a court of law. Because this is an active prosecution, I'll limit my response to those that you've been provided with the charging documents. But I also wanted to take the opportunity to let the public be aware that during this extremely dry time of year and given our historically low snowpack and rainfall so far, the fire danger in Salt Lake County is very high, and neighboring counties have an extreme fire danger. Very high rating means that the fires start easily from all causes and immediately after ignition, spread rapidly and increase quickly in intensity. And spot fires, starting new fires, is a constant danger. When conditions are extreme, all fires are potentially serious because the fires start quickly, spread furiously, and burn intensely. It is often too dangerous for firefighters to engage with direct attack and suppression tactics in such situations. So if you use fireworks or start a campfire, even if it is legal to do so, and if you cause a wildland fire, or if the fire damages homes or structures or injures someone, we will file criminal charges against you and prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. I want also the public to be aware that if you use fireworks illegally, whether in a restricted area or outside the days allowed by law, you may face arrest, or you may be booked into jail. And then we will prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law. And just to kind of give you a context, the range of options that are available to the prosecution for those criminal conducts range from everything from a first-degree felony, aggravated arson, down to reckless burning, Class A misdemeanors, and depending on the context, the level of injury and harm that you may be causing to people. There is really no excuse for using fireworks illegally, and we call upon our community members to contact law enforcement officials and report any illegal fireworks use. We encourage our law enforcement partners to arrest offenders if appropriate, screen cases with us promptly, and we will aggressively prosecute those cases. If you put our community at risk through the reckless or illegal use of fireworks, you may face these criminal charges. And as many of you know, last weekend we saw numerous fires in Salt Lake County that endangered the lives and threatened property and compromised our air quality. Now is not the time to be careless with fires or to use fireworks recklessly or illegally. If you do, you may face consequences. It is the responsibility of the person lighting the fireworks or to ensure that they're doing so lawfully and safely. This responsibility is placed on the individual. Unfortunately, the consequence of such reckless or unlawful behavior is borne by us all as a community. So we just want to just raise that issue because as we find ourselves in this compromised season and the danger being as how high they are. With that, let me turn the time over to Chief Carl Lieb and followed by Fire Marshal Allred if he wants to make some comments. Chief.
Thank you, Sim. Good morning, everyone. Just to reemphasize what Sim just said, the conditions and the risk for wildfire right now are certainly elevated, not only in Salt Lake City, but across the state of Utah. If the fire activity in Salt Lake was any indication of what we have in store for us this summer, it is going to be a very busy and potentially dangerous season. So clearly, the risk is not only to our public, but it's also to our firefighters who perform their duties in these really hazardous conditions. And I think some people often forget that. As Sim said, if people are shooting off illegal fireworks or they're shooting off fireworks in a restricted zone, whether it's negligent, whether it's careless, whether it's willful, each one of these fire incidents is investigated, and if it's criminal, it will be prosecuted. Some are not criminal, but everyone needs to take extreme caution this year, particularly this summer during the holidays. Observe your local restrictions for your municipality. Be careful. Keep your eye out for what's going on around you. If you see illegal activity or potentially hazardous activity, contact your municipality. Let them know. Someone will come out. We'll try and engage those individuals. Okay? Thank you. We appreciate everyone's heightened awareness this year.
Thank you, Chief. I don't think I have anything to say that the Chief and our District Attorney haven't said very well, but it is the responsibility. If you choose to use fireworks this year, it is your responsibility to know the rules and the restrictions. Those restrictions are published on the Salt Lake City Fire website. They're published for countywide information on the Unified Fires website. Those maps are interactive, and just because you're using fireworks in an open area does not alleviate you of the responsibility of being careful. If it's been said before, and I'll say it again, this is not the year to not be careful with ignition sources of any sort. It is very likely that that type of use will result in endangering lives and the loss of property to potentially you and your neighbors. Thank you.
We'd be happy to answer any questions if you have.
Reading all the social media comments, there's always the one that says, why not just ban them? With as high as the fire danger is?
I think the answer to that is that that's with our policymakers, our legislators, and they have that responsibility. We enforce the law, they investigate the incidents. And as the chief said, some may be human cause, and if the criminal investigation leads itself to that, we're going to prosecute that. Those are broader policy issues. At this moment, we find ourselves in a really compromised situation environmentally. The dangers are extreme, and it is, and as Fire Marshal Allred said, and the chief mentioned, right, last weekend we had multiple fires. We had, I think, 3 to 5 that were in the ballpark area. We had one on Victory Road. We had one in Memory Grove, and we have the fire that's up by the University Hospital. So that all happened in a very short period of time. That speaks to the situation we're at, and what we're really doing is talking about what we are facing and what our responsibility is at this moment. Your question is valid, but that's really for policymakers to address that issue. And the other thing that I just want to be mindful, just because you might be able to use something legally does not mean that your conduct isn't reckless. And if your conduct is reckless and it results in loss of property or loss of life, it opens you up for criminal prosecution, everything from a Class A misdemeanor to a first-degree felony. There's a reason why fire response has an investigation division. I think sometimes people forget they have the same lawful authority as any other law enforcement officer to investigate, document, and screen those cases for criminal filing where they find that. And that's really what we don't want to be doing, but I think we as a community have an opportunity, and this is really, telling them and sharing with them what the reality is in terms of that consequence, but also a plea from, I think, from all of us to say we all have a role to play in this, especially this season, and we want us to be vigilant. We want them to know that the other people may engage in criminal conduct. Please call law enforcement, pay attention to your surroundings, and there's no reason why we can't have a safe and healthy community and go through this challenging moment that we find ourselves in.
Just given that, sorry, I'm just trying to figure out how to phrase this. Do you feel like this case, we're almost like making an example out of this case right here? Like you will be prosecuted in full extent of the law?
Yeah, well, I think what we're trying to say is I think people forget that there are criminal consequences for that, even when that behavior, what they might think is otherwise protected, right? So you could be engaging in lawful behavior, but if you do so in a reckless manner or in an intentional manner or as willful as, different ways, and it then causes a fire and then it causes damage or causes injury, there's a nexus that comes back to you for that, right? And that's an extreme. We don't want to be in there. But unfortunately, there are people who engage in that, and the legislature has given us a mechanism by which to address that. The other thing, to your point, think about just this last weekend, as I mentioned, right? 5 fires in the ballpark, one up on Victory Road, one in Memory Grove, one up by the Huntsman. That's a lot of fires, and as the chief said, their teams are responding, they're cautious, they're concerned about what that's going to mean. And I think it's also just as a proactive approach to say there are consequences that people may not think, even for reckless conduct, which is criminal. But at the same time, ideally, we just want to be vigilant and not have this situation. But if it does arise to that level, they need to be aware that there can be sometimes criminal consequences for that. And that really came from that weekend. So we're filing that charge, but it's also coming in the context of the moment that we find ourselves in.
And one more question.
Yeah.
I know you don't want to talk too much about the specifics, but for this case, just to elaborate, you're saying that this is reckless, not necessarily
Yes.
intentionally set.
That's right. So today there were 3 counts filed, 1 count of reckless burning, 1 count of possession. As a part of that investigation, they found some drugs and some paraphernalia. So all of the damages was approximately $15,000. What we know is that conduct was reckless. So when we combine that, that's the charge that we have. Similarly, you can have intentional conduct. You can have habitable structures where you may have a compromise for anything from serious loss of life to serious bodily injury to substantial bodily injuries. And each one of those elements within that will change the filing degree that we would have and the accountability that we would have. Okay?
Has there been any reaching out from your office or from your office to those up on Capitol to be proactive this season rather than having you guys be reactive all the time? Or not?
There's continual communication with the fire chiefs across this valley, and I'm sure across the state, with the policymakers, the legislature. It's always a conversation about the hazards as opposed to the ability to celebrate our country as well. So there's a lot of factors involved, and everyone has a different perspective. But to answer your question, yeah, that's an ongoing collaborative effort throughout the state. Anything to add to that?
No, we do appreciate the opportunity we have through our various fire service organizations to collaborate with both the governor's office and the legislature. We do that annually. As you know, the legislature is not in session. They come into session once a year. And, we react to what we've seen over the last 3 years when we are prioritizing things for our legislature and having those discussions. But yeah, like the chief said, it's an ongoing discussion, but it's up to us and citizens to react to immediate hazardous conditions.
And I think part of your question was maybe also about what is, in terms of communication, I think Fire Marshal Aller had mentioned that that's where those zones and classifications come from, because that tell us the risk level. And if you're in that risk level, then you need to be heightened, right? If you are in an extreme area, you need to be very mindful as a property owner, or, you know, and so I think those demarcations, I think, really are about alerting our community about what those risks might be.
Could there be a scenario where parents are held liable, because we all know that, people under 18 or minors, like to light off fireworks too. Do you know if there's any plan for that scenario at all?
That's an interesting legal question from a charging perspective. I think a couple of things. The way I would do it is, one, always remember that you may be civilly liable if you damage things that are around your neighbor. So there's that risk, right? Then the second part of that is, depending on each facts, our cases are filed on very fact specific. But if a adult is encouraging or contributing to that, then they're a party to that offense with that minor. And so there may be some liability from a criminal charging perspective that can also attach, depending on what the context of that is, right? And so, and of course, we want all adults to be mindful of the time of the year, the environmental conditions that we're in. And again, as the chief mentioned, we have our July 4th and 24th coming up. We want to celebrate. There are safe ways to do it, but there's also reckless ways to do it. And if you engage in it in a reckless manner, then it may rise to that. Take, for example, sparkler. You're sitting there with sparkler, and it comes to it burns out, and you throw it over the fence into a field. That's reckless. Maybe putting it into a bucket of water is different, right? So those are very fact specifics. That's why we have great investigators, and they go and investigate these, and then they bring them in, just like any criminal prosecution. We work with them hand in hand, and we look at the underlying facts, the evidence that we have, and then we make appropriate charges if those are warranted. Okay. All right? Oh, please.
This might be more for the fire officials, but it seems like based on the charges, this individual might have experienced homelessness. There was also the fire you mentioned in Victory Road. Is that a concern with these individuals who maybe aren't living in where we would expect?
Our concern is with anyone who illegally starts a fire or begins a conflagration that could potentially result in injury or property loss. Whether their socioeconomic status is homeless or not, unsheltered, they maybe have some mental illness factors, substance abuse. We do not know. We react to the situation at hand. We are first responders. That's our number one priority, is life safety, and that's our mission. And that's what we implement in every case. This last Bonneville fire? The Memory Grove fire lasted relatively brief period of time. It did get into some high canopy trees, so we're talking 30-foot tall trees, which created quite a smoke plume, which everyone across the valley saw, and I think it looked probably quite a bit larger than it actually was. Fortunately, it was within the city. We had firefighters on scene within 3 minutes, lots of firefighters on scene. And the faster we get to these incidents, the more optimal the result usually is.
And from a charging perspective, I think as we did in our filing documents, we estimate about $15,000 in loss of property from some of those trees. Okay? Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you, Chief. Thanks.
Appreciate it.